Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Seniors Blue Book University. I am so excited today to bring on this group of dynamic ladies, all covering senior living options. And I just want to introduce each and every one of you before we get started with our Q&A. First, we'll start with Heather Cartwright. How are you this morning, Heather?
Hi, good morning. I am great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you for asking. Now, you are with an organization called My Care Finders. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So we own the company. I founded it in 2018. Prior to that, I actually am a former administrator in the area locally. So as far as helping with the ins and outs of communities, I feel I know them pretty well in the area. I have great relationships with them. So that's a little bit of background on how we started our company. And then my husband, who joined me since he's actually a former skilled nursing facility administrator, and he's been in the industry for over 20 years doing this. So that's how we started with what we do now.
Wonderful. I always love doing these. I get to know a little bit about each and every one of my people. So thank you so much, Heather. All right, next up on the docket, we have Cassidy Kramer. How are you this morning, Cassidy?
Oh, I am awesome. How are you?
Good, thank you. Tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, what brought you to Discovery Senior Living.
Yes, so I am the business development specialist at Discovery Senior Living. I support both Discovery Village at Sarasota Bay and also Discovery Commons at Bradenton. I've been in the industry for quite a while as both sales director and also for a referral company. So I have both sides of the spectrum. I love the industry. I just moved to Florida a few months ago from New Orleans, and I love it here. So grateful.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the area. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Elisa Grabber. How are you this morning?
I'm great. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into this wonderful industry.
I'd be happy to. So I am the corporate marketing director for Inspired Living, for Validus Senior Living, who oversees Inspired Living and Superior Residences. And what brought me to the business was actually taking care of my mom for 5 years. I've been in corporate marketing for over 25 years. And for a few years, I was overseeing my mom's care and ended up choosing Inspired Living. And when a corporate marketing position opened up there, I was just tickled pink and thrilled to come onto the team.
That's fantastic. What a wonderful story. I do think that really brings a lot of passion when you go through and experience yourself.
It sure does.
Absolutely. All right, Miss Renee, how are you this morning?
I am well. How are you doing?
Good. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your background, what brought you into the industry.
Well, I have been in sales forever, and I came in, so this was all new for me, with the exception of having, like yourself, dealing with it because of a parent, or I should say my grandfather. So it took me into avenues that I was just like, wow, this is what, until you get to those little nuances and things, you're going, this is what really goes on. And so looking at it now, I'm very protective of my seniors, wanting to help. I love the industry. I've been into it about going on 3 years now, loving it. Don't want to do anything else at this point. So there's my story.
That's your story and you're sticking to it, right, Renee?
You go, I'm sticking to it.
All right, so we're going to dive right into our Q&A area, and anybody that has questions, please put them in the chat and we will get answers back to you right away. So let's start with Heather. Heather, tell me exactly what the role of a senior care advisor is.
Sure, thank you. So as far as what we do, we are an advocate for families. So we're looking at senior living options from all across the spectrum, whether it's nursing homes, assisted living, independent living, memory care. We are a true resource and advocate for them. And part of what that is, it's helping reduce the stress that families have, and then also giving them the peace of mind that they actually have a support system. And we look into what's important to the family and look at the services and amenities and what they need to be looking also at the budget on what they can afford. So those are all things that we actually can help do a preliminary for them, if you will, before they are actually going out and looking at these senior living communities.
Sure. And what would you say some of the benefits of utilizing a service like yours would be?
Oh, geez. there's lots
Where
of
do we
benefits.
start, right?
Yeah. Well, it's already a stressful enough time, I feel, for families, and be an advocate and helping them, presenting them with these options will, of course, saving them time, taking the legwork out of it for them. And then it's not one size fits all every single situation. So it allows us to assist these families with the different options. We'll be asking them questions on their behalf, the actual facilities, because what we'll do is we tour with them. So we don't just leave them out there alone. We actually come up with a few good options, and we actually will do the tours with these families, providing that extra layer of support, which is extremely important. And then we're also a great resource from that standpoint as well, where we're able to really connect the families and other resources, such as, whether you name it, elder law attorneys, moving companies, even other ways to pay that they may not be aware of, educating them, such as aid and attendance.
Sure.
So those are a lot of reasons that I feel would be a benefit. And of course, being that with the industry as a whole, there's just too many options out there to do this alone.
Absolutely. So we're going to bounce over to Renee and talk about independent living communities. Now, there are so many different options out there, obviously, as Heather mentioned, and it can be quite overwhelming. When it comes to independent living, talk to me about the differences between a rental independent living community and in our industry, we do these acronyms all the time, a CCRC, a continuing care retirement community. So what are the big differences between those two?
Well, what we offer here at Cypress Springs as an independent, first off, their independence. That's number one. So it's kind of like a cruise ship that doesn't leave dock. You come in, you have your apartment here, we have your amenities, you have all of your activities that are going on. Now, with that being said, going forward, if that person needs any help, we have vendors in place. We have our physical therapy that is here, Legacy. So if that doctor says we need this, so we have things to keep them where they can age in place. And that's one of the big differences. We're one of the only communities now that still have live-in managers, that are here in our community at all times. So there's a little bit of a difference. It keeps them where they can go out. It's pretty much having your home around. A rental is a rental. We don't do leases. It is month to month. Life happens. So if they say after 30 days, 90 days, oh my gosh, you know what? I want to go back to my kids in New York. Not a problem. 30-day notice and go ahead. So it keeps everybody running smoothly and not causing I need to get out of a lease and oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I think we're a great, opportunity for folks.
Absolutely. And with a continuing care retirement community, you have that very large entrance fee. And if you make that decision that you want to go back up north with your family, it's a lot more complicated to get out of that contract, because it's very much like a long-term care insurance policy. So big differences there. I didn't even realize with the independent living that it's a 30-day notice. So that's awesome, Renee. Very good.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So Cassidy, we're going to talk a little bit about assisted living now. Again, this industry has so many acronyms, and sometimes professionals really do forget. What is an ADL? Let's start with that. And how does a community, how do people pay for these services when they need help with their ADLs?
Okay, so an ADL is an activity of daily living. These are things that sometimes we take for granted on a daily basis, such as bathing, dressing, toileting, taking medications, things like this. So every community is different when it comes to paying, as we all know. Some are a la carte, if you need help bathing and that's it, they'll charge for that. Some companies will do a point system to where they will do an assessment or a little discovery, and whatever it is that you need, they'll come up with a certain amount of points and they'll have different levels. Some communities are all inclusive, to where your base rent and your care is all included. So it really depends on the community that you're touring and visiting to ask those questions on what you're going to be paying before you sign that lease.
Yes, for sure, for sure. And also there's so many different type of licensures that communities have. You have your standard, your LNS, your ECC. Tell me a little bit about the differences between those licenses.
Okay, so standard license is the license that you need for operation in an assisted living. Every community needs this license to be open. LNS is a limited nursing license, which they have nurses around the clock. They can do wound care, they can do catheters, they can do insulin. Then there's an ECC license, which is extended congregate care license. This license, they can do more skilled care. So it really depends on the facility on if they're going to do ECC. I know some will take trachs, some will take catheters.
Right.
It really depends on what they decide to do.
It really does. And that's just one step below your skilled nursing communities, which is a whole nother ball of wax, right, ladies?
It's a really great choice for rehabbing as well.
It definitely is. Definitely. Absolutely. All right, Elisa, let's talk about memory care. When would you say someone should start looking at memory care communities? I emphasize that because I know that a lot of times you probably have last minute admissions of people when they have hit crisis mode. So when should they start looking, and what are some of the things that you would tell them as they're going through that process?
Well, that's interesting that you asked that, because my mom did have dementia, and lucky for me, she never ended up in memory care, but I had to deal with that personally. So really, when you start looking for an assisted living community and you have a loved one that has some memory issues, you may want to look at that continuum of care so that you have a plan, because you don't necessarily want to move twice. And so for me, that was actually one of the reasons I was drawn to Inspired Living, was because the Lakewood Ranch community that she ended up living at had assisted living and community, the memory care community on the other end of the building. So it can happen very quickly, it can happen very slowly, and there's no way of knowing what you're going to be dealing with a year down the line.
You really, really don't. And when would you say someone is no longer appropriate for a memory care community, and what would that next step look like?
For a memory care community or assisted living?
Memory.
For memory care. I'm not the expert on that, but I can tell you that when they're having behaviors that are becoming an issue, and management will let you know, but when there are issues, there are sometimes some really interesting behaviors that end up coming to the surface, and they can become an issue. So, or I suppose if you have a medical issue that is where they get to a point where it's maybe an end of life situation and hospice is not able to assist. But I'm actually, the other ladies might be able to better address that, because I'm more marketing than a person who's been on the floor working with the communities.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for your contribution there. And ladies, we'll get into that. Heather, I'm going to bounce back up to you. Now, we talked about the benefits of utilizing your services. And much like I asked Elisa, when would someone need to start looking into your services, would you say?
Definitely as soon as they're actually thinking that they're going to need to start looking at this, because the sooner the better. Again, with all the legwork that's involved, if we get in front of this, we can help with it not be so overwhelming again. So really, as soon as possible, and for the families, if they're looking online, they're entering their information in, it's always going to be more cumbersome, because again, with having to do it that way and then trying to find out the pricing. So the sooner they do it, the better. And then we're just there to help provide the information, be a great resource for them. So just early on, as soon as possible, and then we can figure out which community would be best, which licensure would be better fit for the family and better suited, and also looking at the geographic location.
Yeah, and it's definitely better to be, 5 minutes or 5 years early than 5 minutes late when it comes to this. Now, your services, how does somebody pay for those? And would they have to pay anything to get upfront advice from you and start working with you that 5 years early?
Absolutely not. And I encourage to do it sooner than later for that reason. So it is not a crisis situation, because then it's a lot more difficult. You may make a decision or placement that you regret. With that said, with our services completely free for families, we're very transparent the way it works. And we're here to be a resource for them to contact us anytime, day or night. I actually provide my personal cell phone for that reason. So that way they know I'm always reachable, and to share with them the information and to show them how we are a free resource for the family.
Fantastic. I love that, because you can always start early, have these conversations early, and really understand what those next steps look like, so you're not operating in crisis mode.
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right, Renee, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about you kind of dabbled on this. I just want to really hone in on it. If somebody's living in your community and they need a little bit of care, does that mean that they need to move? What services would you bring in? What community partners do you have that would keep them independent and aging in place in their home there?
Well, right now we have 2 vendors that have an office physically here at our community. Okay. One is more for like the CNA aides, if you need someone to come in and help. And so you have a time frame to say, I need someone for an hour a day or 30 minutes or just in the evening to help them at their evening ritual, whatever that case may be.
Sure.
So they are here, and that is private pay. You also have our Legacy, who is here, who is our therapist. So occupational, home health care, different things like that. And we also have nurses on call who happen to come in if there are home health care orders that the doctor says they need this. This helps them going forward. You find that they get better and resume back to their normal lifestyle sooner being at home, as opposed to sometimes saying I have to go into a rehab and they want to go home. I want to go home. And their concentration is more focused on getting out than getting better. So having those vendors here helps them get better quicker. They want to get back with friends. It's kind of, that competitive, I want to get back out here and be able to play cards or horse racing, whatever the case may be. They want to get back with their peers. So they tend to bounce back quicker. And I want to go out and play with the kids in the park, I don't want to be in the detention. So
now you brought up a ton of amenities that you have there, and I just want to touch on this too. What's included in your rent?
Everything. The only thing that is not included in our rent is internet and a home phone.
Okay.
So the 3 meals are included. We don't do meal plans. It's like I said, people ask about that all the time. I said, I would not want to be the food police. Hey, you pay for 1 meal, get out of here, So we've streamlined it. I love how Hawthorne did it. It's simple, direct, and it makes it easy understanding families. Hey, well, I don't have to worry about this and that. No, everything is here.
Perfect.
It's, one-stop shop.
Awesome. Thank you. Cassidy, I'm going to roll on over to you and ask you kind of some of the same things. When would someone no longer be capable of staying in the assisted living, which is the field that you're representing today, and what services are included in your assisted living?
So in assisted living, it all depends on your license, of course. And then the nurse will go ahead and do an evaluation. Some people call it an assessment, a discovery on what kind of care needs that resident needs. So typically, if our caregivers are not able to take care of your loved one, we're not going to let you move in. We will help you with resources and finding another solution. But it's so important to just not move anyone in if we can't take care of them. We really pride ourselves on our care.
So how often do you update that information to determine if someone's acceptable or appropriate to be in your assisted living community?
Well, it's 30, 60, and 90 days. But we really are every day. We're charting, making notes, communicating with the home health, the hospices, the family members, just to make sure everybody's on the same page and they're receiving that personalization of care that they deserve.
Perfect.
And
services.
And as far as services go, we do have the CNAs, we have caregivers, we have LPNs, RNs, and we give that care. We have the 3 meals that are included, electricity is included. We have activities around the clock. I'm sure there's so much more than I can say that's included. We go on field trips. It really is everything that you need. You can come in. And I do want to say, as far as home health and hospice, you can have that in assisted living as well. You don't have to go out to receive those. You can live in assisted living until end of life. Hospice can come in because we do want to see you and take care of you until that end of life. We don't want you to have to move out, your last few weeks. We want you to be comfortable and happy.
That was actually something that my mom benefited from, was hospice in her room. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
It's wonderful.
Mhm.
Well, moving down to you, I want to ask you, Elisa, there's a connection when it comes to memory and music. There's an important link, and we talk about that in memory care communities often. And I'm sure with your personal experience can actually give some personal stories to that. So tell me what your thoughts are when it comes to that link between memory and music.
What a great segue, because that is actually something that hospice brought. So as my mom was less able to do her regular activities and really just wasn't inclined to, one of the things she could really enjoy in bed was listening to music. And so I gave the hospice caregiver a list of old show tunes that she liked and different composers that she enjoyed. And they brought in recordings and had a headset that she could put on. And I have photos of her with this huge smile, just listening to music. So yes, it brings a quality of life that is hard to find in other ways when you're at that point in your life.
Yeah, and these memory care communities do such a great job with their different activities and entertainment that they bring in that's really specific for that disease process. And I've heard stories, and I've actually seen it with my own eyes, of people that are non-communicating. They haven't spoken in years, and you play a song and they'll start singing. It's a beautiful thing. So that definitely, there's such a connection between music and memory. I really think that in memory care communities, they have their activity calendar up and running really well.
I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it spoke about a gentleman who had been non-communicative for an entire year. This guy's dad, and it was around the holidays, and Hava Nagila came on. And he came literally out of like a stupor and started singing. So absolutely.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful thing for sure. Well, ladies, this has been such a pleasure getting to know each and every one of you and sharing the information about your communities. We're going to make sure all your contact information is in the chat, and any questions, if you, our viewers, can reach out to these folks individually, we would be grateful. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode, and I hope you ladies have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.